right now, under our wall in Sullivan Park, New Mexico, there's a fiber optic cord under the wall. And this fiber optic cord can detect any type of seismic activity within a 50-foot radius all the way around that cord. So if someone's walking up and gets into the zone of 50 feet, it's going to start setting off alarms and let Border Patrol know there's people approaching the wall before they even get to the wall.
Welcome to Crossroads. I'm your host, Joshua Philipp. Today we have with us Brian Kolfage. He's with the Build the Wall Foundation. So Brian, real pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
The Build the Wall guys, these are the guys independently funding and building the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. And I know, Brian, you're in court battles right now. You've been attacked. You've gone through all this stuff. Why are you putting yourself through this for this effort?
I think it's because there's a real issue going on our southern border right now. There is a humanitarian crisis as well, and then also, there's a major mass migration coming into the United States, and we don't know who these people are. And our politicians have not been getting the job done for the past, 3 decades. We've been promised border security, and here we are today. And they're still fighting over it. And I feel the American people need to stand up and rise up, and this gives the American people a way to do that and fight back against all the people who say they don't want border security or we don't need it. Well, we can take their $5 donation and turn it into a border wall. And that's what we're doing. We raised over $20 million in 20 days last December. And right now we're, creeping up on $30 million raised.
And I know you were getting a lot of flack ahead of time. People are like, oh, how do you know he's going to do it? How do you know they're not going to take the money? And you were getting all these attacks. Sure enough,
bought yachts and airplanes and all this stuff.
I knew it. But sure enough, you followed through. You did it, and we're seeing the effects of that already.
Right, and I think I would have to be the stupidest person in the world to do anything wrong with that money with everyone watching me. I mean, we see it all the time, but this is on like a grandiose scale of, what not to do with the money. And I made sure that we were good stewards to it and followed through on that promise. And we really just wanted to prove everyone wrong that we could build the wall. And that's what we did.
Now, let's start off on where things are at right now. What have you accomplished with this so far? And where are things at with it?
Yeah, we just finished our first section in Sullivan Park, New Mexico over the summer, and it was just endorsed by the DHS Secretary, Chad Wolf, and also the CBP chief. They were down there about 3 weeks ago, fully endorsed it. They said it changed the game for them the moment that wall went up. And the reason why it changed the game is because we built exactly what those agents asked for. They asked for high tech. They asked for brute force, and we gave them every little detail that they wanted. And the wall works perfectly. No one's been able to breach it to this day. And it shows that the American people can come together to do something in a time of crisis like we used to do back in the day before we relied on the government for so many things now.
It's a very traditional American concept. If you need a bridge, you don't ask the government to build it. You go build it yourself. That's how it used to be.
This country was founded.
Yeah. So tell us your story first. I mean, what was your story that led up to this? What did you see? How did this whole thing start?
Well, I mean, I think it all boils down to my history of being wounded in the Air Force. I lost my legs and my right hand in Iraq on 9/11/04, and just going through that and now seeing where our country was heading, just with this immigration stuff. And I see immigration as the one thing that could really start destroying our country from internally with our economics and everything else. And I think it's very important that we take it serious and have border security and protection. And last December, here we were, 1 year ago yesterday, I created that GoFundMe. And it was just, I was pissed off. I was mad at the way things were going. The government was going to be going into a shutdown, and our politicians were arguing about the money. And I thought maybe I could make a difference by creating this GoFundMe to raise the money for President Trump. But ultimately, I raised the $20 million in 20 days, and I was naive. I thought I could be able to give it to him if he raised $1 billion, but the Democrats were never going to let that happen once he took control. And we met with Steve Bannon and some other people in D.C., and they ultimately decided that, the best way to take this money and get the job done was to build the wall ourselves. And it was actually Steve Bannon's idea to actually take that money and build it ourselves. And the moment he said it, all makes sense. Like, of course, why not? We have the money. We just need to find private citizens to allow us to build the wall.
Well, and the irony with a lot of what's going on now is if you go back a few years, most of these big politicians, left and right, no matter where you're at in the spectrum, were pretty much on the same page when it came to border security. In fact, Barack Obama had some pretty strong statements on it, as did Hillary Clinton. As funny enough, even like Bernie Sanders, if you watch some of his videos talking about
Yep.
open borders and why he opposes open borders, this was not a partisan issue until Trump, funny enough. But now it's
Yeah.
like, I know guys like you take a lot of flack for having this stance.
Yeah, and I think it's so obvious. Like you don't even have to go back that far. You can go back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and all those politicians, Obama, everyone in New York, the hardcore left wingers, they were all for some sort of barrier. And they even were saying that it wasn't fair that people were cutting the line. And that's one of Obama's quotes. I don't have it exactly, but he was mad and said that no one should be cutting the line because it was unfair. And that's what's going on now. But because President Trump is doing it, it's racist and it's wrong. He doesn't like brown people. But it's not about that. It's about doing what's right. We're a nation of laws, and we need to uphold those laws. Otherwise, what good are we?
Yeah, well, and even Bernie Sanders, like I mentioned, if you watch his video talking about it, he's saying, because he's into like socialist redistribution, he's like, oh, well, I mean, these aren't his exact words, but it's along the lines of, oh, well, you can't have that system if anybody could come in and get these benefits. The system doesn't
Right.
work like that. And that was his stance. But again, yeah, and I know you guys like you kind of have taken the strong stance on it. You've gone out and done it yourself, and you've taken a whole lot of personal attacks because of it. Can you tell us a bit about what you've gone through in order to take this stance?
Well, initially, there was a lot of death threats against my family, my kids, myself. I mean, just disgusting stuff. The FBI even got involved and is pursuing a case against someone from Chicago. Even like the left wing Hollywood celebs were getting involved. Alyssa Milano was attacking me. She made some stupid comment about that money could be raised for veterans, not even knowing that I was a veteran raising the money. And everyone was just trying to take their jabs at me, but it was, where are they now? Everyone was saying we were going to steal the money. I was going to buy yachts and airplanes and all this other crap. And here we are today. We built the wall. We got it done, and we're still building wall. We've been true to our word, and they're just silent. We just shut them up, and that's what I think the best way to do is just prove them wrong.
Yeah, and on that note too, can you tell us where things are at currently? I know you're locked up in this court battle right now, right?
Yeah, we have a couple different projects we're working on right now. The one that we were about to start, or we did start in Mission, Texas, which is right by McAllen. We have a revolutionary new wall system with our strategic partner, Fisher Industries, where the wall actually is built on the border of the banks of the Rio Grande. And currently, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers doesn't, in the entire state of Texas, they don't build the wall anywhere on the border. They build it 1.5 miles inland, sometimes 2 miles inland. And it's ridiculous. So we thought, why not have the wall on the banks of the river where the border is? It makes more sense. And we designed this wall with Fisher so it wouldn't inhibit the floods. It wouldn't, push water back on Mexico, and it wouldn't fall over. Just using modern construction techniques. But of course, the liberals are all up in arms, saying, it's going to cause flooding to Mexico and it's going to hurt the butterflies. And we're working through that. But we also have roughly 250 miles of private land of citizens in Texas who want us to build the wall. And we don't have the funds to do that personally, but if we can get the federal government to give us some funds, we could build 250 miles and have it done by election day for the president. So that's where we're at right now.
And in terms of the impact of what you're doing, what would you say the impact is? Because a lot of people will say, oh, well, they can just go around it. It's whatever. But what would you say to people who have that understanding?
Yeah, I think the best way to understand it is our first wall was only 3/4 of a mile, and a normal person think, oh, it's 3/4 of a mile. But look what DHS and Border Patrol raved about it. They said it's the best thing that ever happened in that area, and it's changed the game. And it's just 3/4 of a mile. And if you can put these walls up in strategic areas and close gaps, because our entire border is littered with gaps, and just close off these gaps, it's a force multiplier for our Border Patrol agents so they can better handle the crisis. Yeah, people might go around it and try to find a way in, but they can manage it easier this way. They can get the criminals actually in cuffs versus them just running across and hiding and things like that. It's a force multiplier, and border walls work. Case in point is Israel. The moment they finished their wall in 2016, it stopped 99.9% of all illegal crossings. And there's no reason why we can't do that here in the United States.
Yeah, well, I'm from San Diego originally. I've actually done ride-alongs with Border Patrol out there, and if you really listen to the story of why they built the wall, and San Diego has kind of the best wall in the country, right?
Right.
They have the Ballard Type 2 system. It's kind of like the model they're talking about building across the whole border right now.
Yeah.
But if you read into the history, they mainly built the wall near the really highly populated areas, because the issue they had was people were doing what they called bonsai charges, where they'd get, say, 200 people, they'd line up and just charge the border. They'd run into oncoming traffic. It was a mess. Border Patrol agents were scared for their lives. They couldn't get involved because they were like outnumbered 50-1, sometimes more than that. You're not just dealing with immigrants, you're dealing with drug dealers, cartel members, and stuff like that, which people sometimes don't realize. Not to mention human traffickers and guys like that. But when they built the wall, a lot of that stopped. Of course, the drug trafficking still continued with, say, what do they call them? Boats, semi-submersibles, that kind of thing. But it did make a huge difference in terms of Border Patrol being able to manage the situation. And when they were talking about it, they were really talking about it from the safety standpoint for Border Patrol agents.
Yep. And another thing in San Diego, when they built that wall, the property value along the border all went up because the crime dropped. It was more safe in those communities. And it's a proven statistic. And the border wall works. And a case in point is San Diego, of all places.
Yeah, well, and if you go there too, it's like, it's nice suburbs there now.
Right.
They're nice,
right
nice houses, right on the border. Yeah. And they were telling me doing the ride along, they're like, yeah, you would have never seen this, 20 years ago. This would have never happened 20 years ago. It was too dangerous of an area 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. But so tell us a bit about what you were told by these, DHS, Homeland Security guys in terms of what you did, and why they see it as being valuable, because I think this is an interesting point.
Well, I think it's valuable because we went the high-tech route, and the federal government is now realizing, you do need this high technology with the brute force of a wall, because the early detection systems is what's going to deter people from coming across. And it's ultimately going to get them caught, because right now under our wall in Summerlin Park, New Mexico, there's a fiber optic cord under the wall. And this fiber optic cord can detect any type of seismic activity within a 50-foot radius all the way around that cord. So if someone's walking up and it gets into the zone of 50 feet, it's going to start setting off alarms and let Border Patrol know there's people approaching the wall before they even get to the wall. And this will give them time to actually respond to that spot. And it's also going to let them know within 10 feet of where those people are at. And so it's these little things that people don't even realize are there, which have a great impact. And no wall is, no wall is undefeatable. Anyone can climb a wall if they have enough time. These are meant to slow people down in time for Border Patrol to get there. And just like we saw that viral video of some guys climbing up the wall and running off into the sunset, and all the Democrats were saying, oh, the walls are worthless. And then Border Patrol put out another video a week ago, or a week after that, completely debunking it, saying that they arrested the guys and the wall worked as planned. And I think it just goes to show you, when you have the technology working in hand with the agents, the walls work. And for us doing this privately, I think the federal government's now realizing that maybe we could help them close up a lot of other smaller gaps that that the government's not focused on as much, because they're building hundreds of miles out in the middle of the desert. And there's a lot of small areas like in San Diego or Summerlin Park, which are in urban areas, which are completely being taken advantage of by the cartels because they're in urban areas. And like you said, they just rush across. And those are the problematic areas that are small, which We Build the Wall can help. And we're actually working with the Department of Homeland Security now on some federal projects to build wall for them at no cost. And that's kind of where we're going to be leading into the future.
Interesting. And you also mentioned you're building it right on the border. And this is an interesting point. I know our own border reporter with Epoch Times, Charlotte Cuthbertson, she's down at the border quite a bit, and I've talked with her. From what I understand, one of the issues we have is when we build it a mile back, even if they get apprehended, by Border Patrol, they're technically on American soil, so we need to process them in our systems because of that.
Right.
Is that why you did it, or was there another reason?
No, well, in almost all our borders, wall is built, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet off the line. And the border agents really don't care. They're not going to go around the wall if someone touches it, tries to claim asylum. But what's going on in Texas is bad because the walls are being built a mile inland or 2 miles inland. And you're essentially fencing in American citizens on the other side of the wall. And who wants to be on the other side of the wall? I wouldn't want to be on the other side of that wall. And that's why a lot of ranchers down there don't want this wall that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is trying to put up and have been putting up for the last decade. So our wall puts it right on the water line. So if those illegal aliens come across the Rio Grande, they're going to hit a wall as soon as they get to the land, and they're not going to want to cross there just because of that. So they're just going to look at it. It's going to be a 100% deterrent not to cross right there.
Interesting. And I understand, too, you've talked to a lot of people at the border. What are some of the things you've heard from people living there?
Well, a lot. I mean, you hear a lot of people who are against the wall, but there's also 10 times more that are for it and want it. And one of the private landowners in Arizona we were working with, and we were going to build a wall for him. But his family, his wife and children were Democrats, and they didn't really want the wall. And we were kind of going back and forth with them, trying to seal the deal to build this wall in Arizona. But ultimately, the wife and children had the ultimate say over it, and we didn't build this guy a wall. 2 months after that, cartel members came across, and this guy, his house was right literally 20 feet from the border. They came in and broke into the house, smashed his windows, stole his computer, stole everything out of it. And it's just stories like that, where if they would have had a proper barrier system, their house would have been safe. They wouldn't have got robbed. And ultimately, that man was right and his family was in the wrong. And I'm sure they're going to have an awkward Christmas Day meal this year. But it's just these little stories. And the other stories were kind of based off that, where these ranchers don't lock their doors and they don't lock their windows or their cars because it's cheaper just to let them open the window or open the front door rather than having to break the glass down or smash a door in. And that's how they live, and they shouldn't have to live that way.
I see. Now, I guess, say a few years down the line, what do you hope to accomplish with these efforts? What is your goal with this?
I think right now a long-term goal is keeping this border crisis in the front line in the news, in the media, and let people know what's really going on, because most of the mainstream media is not covering it. And most people in the United States don't even understand the severity of this, of what's going on economically and how this is going to impact, our children and grandchildren in the future. When we have all these migrants coming in, our low wage workers, we have automation coming in to play. And in 20 or 30 years, these kids who are growing up right now are not going to have the jobs that they thought they had. They're not going to have the jobs that we had. And I think it's going to be our next crisis.
I see. So, Brian, I guess if you were to leave our viewers with one message in terms of why you're doing what you're doing, what would you hope people would understand? What would you like to get across?
Well, I think we're doing what we're doing because our politicians are not getting the job done. And if I was an elected member of Congress, I think I would be smart enough to realize that you have to meet in the middle and get stuff done. And our politicians are not representing the people at all. They're representing themselves and their own self-interest and other interests, and they're being paid a lot from outside, people. And frankly, you have to meet in the middle. And I realize that there's individuals here who were brought here against their will as children in their DACA, but something has to be done with them as well. And something also has to be done with this border security. And it's our politicians' job to get it done and meet in the middle and make everyone happy. Because right now they're not getting anything done, and both sides are playing games with it. And it's only going to hurt our country in the long end. And that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Great. Brian, where can people learn more about your organization?
You can go to webuildthewall.us. That's webuildthewall.us. Don't go to .com. That's a liberal site. Webuildthewall.us is one-stop shopping. We have live streams of our wall on there right now. You can watch live. You can go and check out all our information about our nonprofit, see our corporate governance, make donations, see updates. It's all there on our website.
Great. Hey, Brian, real pleasure having you on Crossroads.
All right, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Great. And everyone, please remember to like and subscribe. Click that notification button. See you next time.